Number 8. Natalie Corona. On January the 10th of 2019, 22-year-old Californian police officer Natalie Corona was responding to a 3-car crash in Davis. It was, as Police Chief Darren Pytel would later call it, a routine traffic collision. That is, until a man on a bike, who had nothing to do with the car crash, rode up and started shooting. He hit Corona, who had only been on the job for a few weeks, once, causing her to fall to the ground. After she did, the man unloaded an entire magazine on her before reloading and starting to fire at bystanders. He hit an attending firefighter in the boot, hit a backpack, narrowly missing another bystander, and then took off again. According to his roommate, whom he ran into on his way inside the house, the shooter was acting completely normal. Luckily for the police, the shooter had left behind his backpack at the scene, and they quickly had the suspect identified and surrounded. The killer was 48-year-old Kevin Limbaugh. After a short but intense standoff during which Limbaugh exited and re-entered his house a few times, Limbaugh eventually shot himself. He had left behind a note that read, "The Davis Police Department has been hitting me with ultrasonic waves meant to keep dogs from barking. I notified the press, Internal Affairs, and even the FBI about it. I am highly sensitive to its effect on my inner ear. I did my best to appease them, but they have continued for years, and I can't live this way anymore." Number 7. Ashley Gwindon. 28-year-old Ashley Gwindon, a Marine Corps reservist, was fatally shot during her first day as a member of the Prince William County Police Department in Virginia. After being sworn in as a police officer on February the 26th of 2016, Gwindon's first shift was scheduled for the following day. At around 5:30 p.m. during her inaugural day on the job, Gwindon and 2 other officers responded to reports of a domestic dispute in the town of Woodbridge. When they arrived at the scene, Army Staff Sergeant Ronald Hamilton, aged 32, refused to let them come inside the residence. The officers insisted on performing a welfare check on Hamilton's wife, Crystal, who had been the one to place the 911 call in the first place. Officer David McEwen attempted to force his way into the home, at which point Hamilton grabbed an assault rifle and began firing indiscriminately at the officers, hitting all 3 of them in the process. One of the wounded policemen managed to successfully call for backup, but law enforcement personnel were unable to apprehend Hamilton before he shot and killed his wife. Officer Gwindon ultimately passed away from her gunshot wounds as well. The injuries suffered by the 2 additional officers at the scene were not life-threatening. Hamilton was arrested and charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder. After being spared the death sentence, he was formally sentenced to 7 consecutive life terms in March of 2019. Number 6. Jesus Olvera Aguilar. A 19-year-old roofer was fatally struck by lightning in Lakewood Ranch, Florida, on September the 7th of 2021. Jesus Olvera Aguilar and his brother were working atop the Walk Apartments when the incident occurred. The victim's brother heard a loud bang accompanied by a sudden flash of light when the lightning bolt hit the roof at around 2:50 p.m. He turned to find that his brother was unconscious and had stopped breathing. Neighbors performed CPR on Olvera Aguilar while they waited the arrival of paramedics. First responders ultimately pronounced the teenage roofer dead at the scene. The fatal accident prompted an investigation by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. It was reported that the Manatee County Sheriff's Office was treating Olvera Aguilar's death as an accident, and that all evidence confirmed it to have occurred due to the lightning that struck the roof that afternoon. According to officials in the industry, roofers make up at least 15% of all lightning-related deaths in Florida each year. Number 5. Sean DeMoink. On July the 4th of 2021, a volunteer for the Penguin Overbrook Hills Fire Company was tragically killed in the line of duty. It was meant to be the last day on the job for 35-year-old Sean DeMoink. He and his wife, Melissa Richard Greenblatt, had planned to move back to the firefighters' home country of Canada the following week. DeMoink was packing for their upcoming move when he was summoned into work due to a reported fire in Wynwood at around 10:30 p.m. Roughly 30 minutes later, a mayday call went out to the rest of DeMoink's department. The volunteer fireman was found unconscious on the 3rd floor of the burning building to which he had responded. He was taken to Lankenau Hospital but ultimately died from the injuries he'd sustained in the blaze. Firefighters from all across the region attended DeMoink's memorial service on July the 10th, in the course of which the fallen firefighter was laid to rest in Lower Merion Township. Number 4. Ashley Diaz. A crossing guard at Stanley Middle School in Lafayette, California, died after stepping in front of a moving vehicle to save a young girl walking across the street. Ashley Diaz, aged 45, was a San Francisco resident who, as a child, attended the school for which he was now employed. He was on the job in the after-school hours of September the 8th of 2021 and noticed an SUV traveling rapidly towards the crosswalk near the school's premises. The driver failed to slow down despite the fact that there was a student using the crosswalk at the time. As a frontal collision with the little girl became imminent, the crossing guard pushed her out of the way and placed himself in the path of the oncoming car. He thus took the full force of the impact. An unresponsive Diaz was pulled out from underneath the SUV and CPR was administered by witnesses. Lafayette police soon arrived at the scene and the victim was transported to John Muir Medical Center in Walnut Creek, where he would later pass away. A small makeshift memorial was created by students and faculty members near the crosswalk where the accident had occurred, honoring Diaz and the sacrifice he made. Number 3. Jordan Romero and Carlos Gutierrez. A pair of construction workers were killed in Boston, Massachusetts, on February the 24th of 2021 after being hit by a dump truck. 27-year-old Jordan Romero and Carlos Gutierrez, aged 33, were working on a construction site in Boston's financial district when the fatal incident took place. As the dump truck struck the two men, it caused them to fall directly into a 9-foot deep hole in the ground. They were subsequently trapped in the hole until a witness contacted 911 and emergency crews were dispatched to the site. A crane was brought in to lift up the truck, which had gotten stuck at the opening of the hole. The technical rescue crew feared that simply backing the truck up might cause the above structure to cave in on the two victims. Once the men were successfully extricated from the trench, they were both pronounced dead by first responders at the scene. Romero's family described him as a hard-working man who was trying to save up enough money to bring his family to the United States from El Salvador. He and Gutierrez worked for Atlantic Coast Utilities, a Wayland-based contractor that had a long history of ignoring the safety and health of its employees. According to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, Atlantic Coast faced fines of $1.3 million based on an estimated total of 28 safety violations in connection with the incident. Today's topic was requested by Captain MI5 and Magic Pyro Ninja. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Rolf Lanzendorfer. A sightseeing plane crashed near the Misty Fjords National Monument in Ketchikan, Alaska on August the 5th of 2021, killing the pilot and all 5 passengers. The aircraft was being piloted by 64-year-old Rolf Lanzendorfer of Cle Elum, Washington. The passengers on board were all vacationing on a Holland America Line cruise ship called the MS New Amsterdam. Ketchikan is a popular port for cruise ships, and the sightseeing plane ride was just part of their excursion while visiting Alaska. The flight through the Misty Fjords gives tourists a view of the glacier valleys and snow-capped mountain peaks in the area. Lanzendorfer crashed the plane at around 11:20 that morning, at which point the aircraft's emergency beacon was automatically activated. Search helicopters spotted the wrecked plane around 2:40 p.m., but the bodies of the victims couldn't be recovered immediately due to inclement weather and limited visibility. According to an investigation conducted by the National Transportation Safety Board, the pilot had crashed into a tree while the plane was traveling through an area with low-hanging clouds. Lanzendorfer had been involved in another plane crash less than a month prior to his deadly accident. On July the 9th, an aircraft he was piloting flipped and landed upside down in the water after hitting a buoy shortly after takeoff. He was the only one on board the plane and he'd suffered no injuries in that particular incident. Number 1. Upper Big Branch Mine Disaster. At roughly 3:30 p.m. on April the 5th of 2010, a coal dust explosion at the Upper Big Branch South Mine in Raleigh County, West Virginia, resulted in the deaths of 29 miners working at the site. There were dangerously high levels of methane gas present within the mines, an aspect that greatly contributed to the eruption of the deadly blast. The mine was being operated by a subsidiary of Massey Energy, a coal extractor that worked primarily in the Appalachian region of the United States. Massey would later be found guilty of ignoring crucial safety standards that had allowed for the development of the dangerous conditions that ultimately led to the disaster. The ventilation systems being utilized in the Upper Big Branch mine hadn't undergone proper maintenance work in the days and weeks leading up to the incident, which in turn precipitated the high levels of methane that caused the explosion. Emergency response teams from multiple surrounding counties were dispatched to the mines in an attempt to find and rescue any of the miners who might have survived the initial blast. The search was repeatedly delayed due to dangerously high levels of methane and carbon monoxide in the mine. It was determined that at least 25 of the workers were deceased as the rescue mission went underway, while 4 individuals remained missing. Within a few days, the 4 bodies previously unaccounted for were found, officially bringing the death toll to 29 people. There had been a total of 31 miners on site at the time of the explosion. The 2 survivors were evacuated early on in the rescue efforts. Massey Energy was fined $10.8 million based on a total of 369 safety citations. Former Massey CEO Don Blankenship was convicted of conspiring to willfully violate safety standards and was imprisoned for 1 year. Thanks for watching. Would you rather get paid minimum wage to literally watch paint dry full time, or be forced to go on an 8-hour hike blindfolded? Let us know in the comments section below.